He mihi mai o kia koutou e hui hui mai nei. Warmest welcomes to everybody that's come here today and me no tātou. Kia hora te Mārino, may the peace be widespread. Kia whakapapa pauna mu te moana. May the sea be like greenstone. Hei huarahi mā tātou, I te wānei, a pathway for all of us right now. Aroha atu, aroha mai, give and receive love. Tātou ia tātou for each other as we go through. Haumia hui e pai ki.
Tia, I'll start sharing. Oh, that's not the right one. That one. Welcome along. This is the first time we've done this in a few years, so we thought it was important to try and get in touch with everyone around what we do and how we do it. So this is just an introduction to our performance pathway. A bit of housekeeping to start. If you wouldn't mind staying muted, and just because we've got quite a few people coming on, if you keep your cameras off as well, there will be an opportunity for questions. If you get burning questions as we go through, if you wouldn't mind just popping them in the chat, and hopefully we can answer a couple as we go along, but otherwise we will answer them at the end. Anything we don't have time to answer or anything that's too complicated and requires a more in-depth answer, I'm happy to answer when we send out the information for the rest of the meeting later in the week, because there's a second meeting on Tuesday. So with that stuff out of the way, thank you all for coming. I appreciate there's actually been a great level of interest, which is pretty exciting. So we're going to explain the Netball Northern performance pathway. And on the first slide is our goal, which is to be the leading performance pathway in New Zealand netball, producing strong, skillful and resilient athletes who consistently progress into professional teams. So that's what we're trying to achieve with this pathway. And how do we do that? So this is the overview of what it looks like. This is just the visual of and exactly what we're going through for the rest of this meeting. It'll be available on our website later in the week. It's not currently there, but the plan is to get it up so that everyone can see this online. The green part at the bottom is all of Netball Northern. Where it gets blue is it becomes ANZ Premiership focused and splits into the two teams. So we'll explain that as we go. This is just a visual timeline of what happens throughout our year. Starting at the beginning of the year, generally kicking off in February. At the bottom, we've got the community stuff. So Super Club's actually on the right because it starts at January, February and runs through till March, and then Club Netball kicks off hard on the heels of that, and then in amongst all that there's centre representative netball, and then we get into our pathway. The timeline changes year on year based on where ANZ Premiership and NNL is from our point of view, and we start in March with some scouting that goes from a community perspective through to the end of the season, but actually, as Tia is quite happy to point out, we never actually stop scouting. We're always looking at people playing netball and trying to judge whether they've improved or where they're at. Again, I'll send this stuff out so you can see the timeline. I don't think there's anything terribly surprising in there. And we start the year generally with scouting. What happens is we advertise this in March. So we advertise it on our socials and we email out the centres, asking for expressions of interest from people in the community if they'd like to scout to help identify our young talented athletes across the zone. Our community-based scouts are generally based in centres anywhere in the zone. And we're looking for people to help ID our next generation of talent. We actively scout under 16s and above, but we look at all of the athletes in our zone playing under 14s and over, really. And the one thing I will say is scouting can be formal, so we go and look at players, but it can also be informal. So if you're out there in a community and you see someone that you think that we haven't seen, please let us know. You can send me an email. If you see me around, you can come and tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, go look at this kid. The more people that we get to know and the more people we get to go and look at, the better success we will have in the future. And Tia, did you want to speak a little bit about the age piece?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't really need to add too much more to what Pete has already described. Sometimes we get questions about age and from what age do we start looking? Pete's already mentioned the under 14 level, and sometimes that includes year 9s and 10s, mostly year 9s. And I guess if we're thinking about how deep we go or how deep we would go into the community at that moment in time, it might be that we identify outliers in that age group. But from a zone point of view, we may not actively try to develop or work with them at that moment in time. It might be that we work with them, we just keep notice of them, and then we work with the community where we can. And I suppose that's what some of this is about, is that if we understand collectively better some of the athletes in those age groups, we're able to track them more successfully. Pete talks about the under 16 level being the active stage at which we engage from a zone level to apply, I guess, higher level of interest and deeper tracking to look towards how we develop from there.
Sweet. So that's just a brief start on scouting. The next part's really important. So to scout effectively, we require information from probably almost all of you. And so we will ask for feed forward information from centres. We don't necessarily go to individual clubs or schools or teams unless there's a need for that. So we will ask for feed forward from centres in May for under 16s and under 18s, and again in August for Eunice, so that we've got a list of people that we know we should go and look at and see where they sit and whether they should go on our list. The information from the feed forward in our scouting is collated to build our database, which is currently identified and is tracking around 150 high school aged athletes. We do have a second database for our year 13s who are leaving or left school, and people that are older than that. So a year 13 at school would sit in that 150, but players, for example, that play under 18s that are no longer at school sit on a separate list. So the feed forward information is incredibly important. It's not much fun getting to the pointy end when we're starting to identify and invite people to stuff and then getting told, oh, have you looked at this kid? Have you looked at that kid? The time to share that information, please, is as soon as you know. I'm always happy to answer an email. I'm always happy to receive an email from anyone, and I'm happy to go and look at anyone in our zone. And if you are the person that sent me that and you want to come and have a look with me, I'm more than happy to arrange that as well. So the more players we can look at, the better. Sweet. Out of our scouting list of around 150 players for our 2 development days. So this year we invited 150 athletes, so that's all of the scouting list. It's the first touch point for athletes into our pathway, and the sessions are deliberately broad. So they cover off-season preparation. We learn the fitness testing, so we don't test them. It's the first time they come into our environment. I don't personally think is the right time to induce anxiety and make them run a yo-yo and do all sorts of things that matter. But teaching them how to do the tests we think is incredibly important. So we learn the yo-yo. So yes, they hear it and yes, they run it, but we let them stop and start and go when they can, and we make sure that they all have a go at the higher levels, 16, 17, sometimes 18, just so they can feel what that feels like. Netball Smart do a little session on that, and then we have specialist coaching sessions in our development days, which are based on our fundamental skills. The coaches for our development days have generally been our coach squad coaches, and if you haven't heard of the coach squad, then that's a program run by Tanya, our community coach lead. And to be in the coach squad, you need to have some sort of coaching qualification, either CCA 1 or 2 or CCQ or PCQ. And if you don't know what any of those things mean and you'd like to be in the coach squad, then you probably need to find out and get one of those. Our coach squad coaches for that work with our coach developers from our high performance coaching group. So Rob leads the coach developers for our coach squad at our development days. And we this year for the first time, we ran one north and one south, and that was very successful. So we would continue to do that. The north one, ideally, we'd probably try and go out sort of north, so North Shore, but there were no venues available. So we ran our north one at Waitakere this year, and our south one was at Bruce Pullman, and we probably continue to look at Bruce Pullman in particular because its size and availability at that time of year, and they're normally in late October. Now, of the 150 athletes that we invited, and this has been true for the last 3 or 4 years, we generally get about half. So this year we had about 80 come to our development days. We've certainly got capacity and we're happy to have more than 80. But the time of year and the availability of people and the things that they're doing make it difficult for more of them to attend. But I'm more than happy to have more than that. Assuming there's no questions at this stage, so we'll plow on. Out of our development days comes our summer squad. And it's a much smaller group. We invite around 60 athletes, which is our National Development Camp long list, which we submit. So there's about 40, mid-40s on our National Development Camp long list, which are generally year 12, 11, and 10 in that order. And then we invite the year 13s who are on our list and any under 18 players who have left school. This is a longer exposure, so this is a 3-week little training block focused on fundamental skills with a particular focus on off-season training. And in these sessions, we're trying to teach our athletes how to learn to train. We're focusing on training to perform, and we're trying to teach them good athlete habits and how to train with intensity, and all of that is quite complicated, which is why it's 3 weeks long. And we're also trying to get adaptation over those 3 weeks so that at the end of it, they are better than when they came in, which is cool. And there's a small education component in there as well. So this year we did a little nutrition session on fueling to perform. Taylor Earl came in and did a little session on athlete habits. And then Jess, the Mystics physio, came and did a little session on recovery. So it's a comprehensive little thing. We try and squeeze a lot into 3 2-hour sessions. And that also gives us a really good exposure of the athletes and them of us so that we all sort of learn a bit together about what we're about. Cool. This is where things start to get a lot pointier. Our preparation series and our performance squad are 2 separate programs, but I've grouped them together. And I'll tell you why in a minute. They're open trials for the preparation series, and those trials are actually this Friday. So open to anyone in the zone. This is a zone-wide program. It's for up to 30 athletes maximum, and we don't have to take 30. We take the ones that we think we can have the most effect on. It's a 6-week preparation program. They get programmed strength and conditioning for the 6 weeks. And then after Christmas, they get 2 coach sessions a week. They get 1 a week until then. And then after that is where our pathway separates from the Stars and Comets, and I'll go into that in a minute, with our performance squad. And our performance squad is a 12-month longitudinal program for up to 10 athletes. It's based out of Trust Arena and is aligned to the Mystics and Marbles. And then the Mystics training partners and apprentice training partners train with the performance squad for the rest of the year when they're not with the Mystics. So after that, well, not after that, because they sit together, is the Netball National League, the NNL. The NNL has open trials, and again, anyone is eligible to, or anyone's allowed to come to those trials. Selection for NNL as a high school athlete is incredibly difficult. I won't go into the wheres and why-fors of that, but we're perfectly happy to have high school players come to trial, but their chances of being selected are very low for a number of reasons. Selections for the two National League teams are geographically based, and the selection policy for that is on our website. It is currently there. I believe there's a line through the Onehunga Inlet, somewhere around there, around Mangere. And people south of the line are aligned with the Comets, and people north of the line are aligned with the Marbles. And in 2026, the NNL will be a 12-week campaign starting straight after Easter. And then each team names 12 players to Netball New Zealand 6 weeks before the first game. And generally those teams of 12 also include the ANZ Premiership training partners and apprentice training partners. Teams then train with up to 16 players, which provides training opportunities for a wider group of athletes. And those extra players are generally the ones if there's injury or illness or a player's unavailable because they're either playing for a franchise team or somewhere else, then those would be the players that we would give the opportunities to play for first. In terms of the specifics of the teams, I won't go into that, but I will say, and this is probably relatively important, is where we split and where the Mystics and Marbles split from the Comets and Stars is that Netball Northern own the Mystics. So that's the alignment there. The Stars and therefore the Comets are owned by Netball New Zealand, and so they are run separately as their own thing. So yes, we work together, but in terms of the pointy end of the pathway, they are two separate entities at that point. After the netball, the NNL, sit our training partners and apprentice training partners. Generally, each team has two. They're allowed up to 4 training partners, but budget very rarely allows more than 2. I think I've heard of a couple of teams have 3 occasionally, but generally the Stars and the Mystics both have 2 training partners, and then teams are also allowed up to 3 apprentice training partners, and they are aligned to their ANZ Premiership team. Align just is from a training perspective. If another team wants them to go and play, then they are more than welcome to ask, and players regularly go and play for different teams. Serena Danukamakama, as an example, was an apprentice training partner with the Mystics when she went down and played for the Steel, where she still plays. So it is just it's a training, exactly what it says, they're training partners. Training partners if you're a training partner, that's a paid position. They train with the ANZ Premiership team for the entire preseason, and then they have a weekly engagement with the team through the rest of the season. So they just come in once a week after the season starts. If they are required for a game, they get paid for the week as part of the agreement with the Players Association. Apprentice training partners only train once a week in the ANZ pre-season. And really sure much what more I can say about that. Tia, do you have any more to add about the training partners and apprentice training partners?
No, I think you've covered the only bit probably to distinguish between apprentices and training partners is the apprentice role is a voluntary role.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Sweet. That
Sorry,
no go.
there's one more piece I just thought might be useful for people
Mhm.
to know. Um, uh, from a transitional point of view at the NNL training partner, apprentice training partner space, as well as our performance squad, I guess along that journey, there are opportunities at every level to be stretched into the ANZ environments. And so all of the things that Pete has just spoken about contribute to the thinking at a higher level of how we track and then expose young players to elite training, and everybody's journey is slightly different. I suppose to give you some real examples, you can go from an apprentice training partner to a fully contracted position, just like you can go from a training partner to a contracted position, or you can go through none of those to a contracted position. So they all apply, and we often will expose young people, even if they're not an NNL, but are in the performance squad, to the ANZ Premiership training environment to help progress their journeys. So I wanted to share that part with people so they understand, I guess, how we link back in from a elite point of view to start transitioning, and how we try to expose young people in a deliberate way.
Sweet. Okay, well that is the end of the formal part, and I was expecting quite a few questions. So you just ask them out loud. If yep, go.
Oh, it's not actually a question. It was just around the scouting piece, and I probably just wanted to reiterate how important it is for um, us to be able to engage with the centres, because the centres in reality are going to know more about their players than anyone else. So all the centres are really critical. So I really want to encourage people in that space, because in reality we need your help to be able to progress all these players. So, yeah, sign up if you would, if you're keen.
Oh, there's a couple of questions there. So our role as community and school coaches is to pass on details of players who we think are worthy of a look. Is that the expectation? I would love that to be the expectation. I don't think expectation is quite the right word, but yes, it would be a lovely thing for you to do. I'm always happy to hear from people about who they think are good, you know. So yeah, maybe not expectation, but more than happy to. And I would love lots of people to send me players so I know who I'm going to look at when I'm going out of a weekend. As a 13-year-old, what's the best way to prepare for the journey ahead? Well, Tia, do you want to answer that one? Because you do a very good job of this.
I just wanted to make a comment on the question above, in relation to if you're in the community and you have information, or you think that we should know about somebody that we may not already know about. For future, it's fine to receive the information. Sometimes the information of what is good now is not necessarily right for future, and what is not good now is right for future, and then what is good now is also right for future. So there are all those different ways, and if I'm being confusing, I don't mean to be. What I'm trying to say is sometimes from an athletic point of view, you'll have young people who are not really that skilled at netball at that point in time, um, particularly if they're younger, and they may not even be in the best team at school or club or reps. Yet they might have the potential to play at an elite level simply because of the nature of their athletic makeup. And so those types of attributes are also as valuable as someone who has netball acumen and netball smarts in the current space, who may need more training. So I would encourage everybody to be broad about how they think about those things and how they share information back about why it's important for us to go and observe somebody, because that always helps inform a better or more rounded picture of what we do. That was what I wanted to say about that question. As a 13-year-old, what is the best way to prepare for a journey ahead? Should I focus on netball or both? Oh, this is one of those questions. It depends, and it is so frustrating to everybody. I understand that. As the 13-year-old, if netball is the desire, then depending on what they're already involved in, can hinder or enhance the next steps of their journey. So if they're looking at elite sport, there are typically things you must do if you want to progress into an elite athlete, and it does take a lot of time. So the biggest factor is always the consideration about time of learning to train, which is one of the biggest catalysts, I suppose, to supporting and informing the young person and their family and their wider community about what's actually required to train for elite netball. And when you are leaving school, if you have the potential, and we see the potential, then we would prepare the planning in accordance with that. But the very strong thing that I would say around it is training becomes the most important thing, and having time to train and time to learn how to train and be healthy and well are some of the most critical factors at that point. So in a nutshell, when you think about how much sport do I play, the sport needs to allow for the time to train and the time to recover from training, to start learning the journey of learning to train for elite sport.
Thanks, Tia. Rob, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I just think certainly for youngsters and in terms of netball, like there's good research that suggests that early specialisation is not great. So I would encourage those youngsters to be playing lots of different sports. Not obviously, it's got to fit in around your entire life, but a variety of sports certainly is exceptionally beneficial. So we're probably not wanting them just to be playing netball as youngsters.
Yep. The other thing I would add is no more than an hour of activity per year of age is a general guideline. And then that depends on all sorts of other things. But they also should train a lot more than they play. So when we talk about training, that it's not a 1-to-1 ratio, it's significantly higher training to playing load. And I'll let you go and work out what that is for you and the people in your communities. Go, Tia.
No, I've changed my mind. I'm taking my head.
Okay. Sweet. Are there any other questions?
Are there any actual guidelines on the ratio for play to train or train to play?
At a community level, they're not. Yes, there is, but they are pretty hard to distinguish, and you end up down a high performance rabbit hole relatively quickly.
Right.
The high performance ratio is something, Tia will correct me, somewhere around 10-to-1.
10 to 1, what?
Like 10 hours training.
10 hours of training for an hour game.
Oh,
Something.
I see what you're saying. Sorry. Yeah, look, I can't comment. I don't want to comment on the ratios without looking at what's available, and I don't have in front of me what's actually available to the community. Jess is actually Jess, our physio, is on, so she might be able to comment in more detail. The thing that's really difficult from my point of view now is we're very individual in the way that we approach the training with the group that we work with. So my knowledge across secondary school athletes in particular is not it's not readily available. what I'm trying to say. But I'm quite happy to work with the team to go back and see potentially what is available. I'm assuming Netball Smart has some guidelines that probably sit best, and then we would look at those in relation to the individual if we thought we needed to accelerate development. Does that make sense, Bernie?
Yeah. And just
like if
as
we
just like I was just kind of looking for some consistency across a number of our school players that have that idea that playing as much as possible and being seen, because they all think that they're aware of the talent IDing as well, and they think that's the way forward. It's just kind of getting that consistency of messaging, I think. Yeah.
I think Amelia is on here as well. Probably might give us a Netball Smart perspective after Jess.
Mm.
Yeah, that's all I was going to say, is that I think Netball Smart and Netball New Zealand have some sort of broad framework guidelines that I think are pretty good from a youth athlete point of view. So I direct you in that sort of direction if you're looking for some specifics to work with your individual athletes, and it's going to be different for everybody slightly. So that's a good starting point, I reckon.
Thank you.
The one thing I will say about the players wanting to play more so that they can be seen, that's I feel like you guys can have the message of, we can just tell them who you are and they can come and look at you at specific times. So the scattergun approach to playing 3 or 4 times a week in the hope that one of us randomly turns up to see you is not great. So hopefully you can all go and take that message back, and if you've got people in your that you're coaching, or that if you I know there's a few athletes on, if you think that that's the way forward, it's not, just get someone to flick us an email with who you are and when you're playing, and we'll come and look at you at the right time. We do specifically go to the local circuit rep tournaments. We go to under 18s, and we are at Eunice, and at Eunice I think I watch nearly every single team from our zone. For I'd say at least a half. It's a lot of games of netball on at Eunice. So that feed forward information is critical, and getting that information out to the players is probably really important as well, so they don't think they have to play 2, 3, 4 times a week, some of them. Go, Pip.
Just one question around when you are scouting. Let's say you see a player and you go, oh, they're almost there. Would you give feedback or things to work on in your process?
Not in the moment, because we don't coach those athletes in the community.
Yeah.
I if I was asked specifically to, I might, but I'd be pretty reluctant. Like the athletes in our community have got to where they are with the coaches they've got. So when they come to us for development day or summer squad, then absolutely we coach them, happy to give them feedback in those instances. But out in the community, I'm not sure I would find that particularly appropriate for me to do, unless I was asked.
Yeah, because the reason I ask that is that obviously there are physical attributes, there are, there's the raw talent that you can just see a player. If there were things that you went, actually it'd be really cool if they could work on that, because that might be the missing link.
Yeah, I might have those conversations with your coach.
Yeah, with the coach.
And I certainly have spoken to coaches about athletes, so I don't see that as an issue.
Yeah.
But you guys have the relationships with the athletes and coach them. Yeah, what does the process look like if you spot talent at a tournament, especially if they're in the younger age group? Do we approach players, parents, coach on the day, or do we reach out to the centre, etc.? It'll be good to know what that looks like in terms of the process for centres. The answer to that is it depends. Normally, we would ask the centre. If I knew the coach, I might have a word with the coach, but generally our first point of contact would be with a centre, if possible. Are there any development pathways for our male netballers? That's a conversation to have with New Zealand Mixed and Men's Netball at the moment. So no, this is our female pathway for netballers playing mainstream netball and netball centres. Yeah. So the answer to the first question, definitely centre first. Unless someone comes and says to me as well, like I'm more than happy to be approached at that point. But yes, we would always ask the centre for details about players first. What I will say if you're still thinking about asking a question, is if you've got questions that you don't feel comfortable asking here, feel free to email me. I'm more than happy to answer questions afterwards. Has anyone got anything they'd like to say or add? Tia or Rob or Claire?
It was probably just around the questions as well. Sometimes you might you hear all this information because there's a lot of information tonight. So there might be something that pops into your head later. So again, get in contact with us probably through Pete, because sometimes all of a sudden you think of something that you hadn't thought of on the night. So yeah, please let us know. We want to make sure that we do a really good job of informing everyone as best we can.
Yep, there's a couple more questions popped in there. Oh, yeah, well done, guys. Like that. Yes, I will share the slides with everyone, and the recording of this will be available online later in the week as well. So if you want to go back and have a listen, you might have questions after you've listened to it a second time. How common is it for secondary school players to get into as an apprentice training partner? Is that what you're asking, or into our pathway? Relatively uncommon. And there's lots of reasons for that. But you're relatively uncommon, but good enough is good enough, and Tia will tell you about that right now.
Just thought I'd put my hand up on that one.
Great.
We've got from Mike, off the top of my head experience, I think we've had one apprentice training partner who was at school in the past 5 years. And we've certainly had people in our performance squad who've been at secondary school. Age and stage is not, potential and development is not determined by age. That's well founded in our experience. And so if there are often outliers in the secondary school space who could be apprentice training partners and could certainly be in our performance program. Over time, we have taken those from school. Everyone copes differently with that in the process. Some people are able to maintain the training and the commitment that's required around it, and others can do a hybrid model of training within that, depending on their other commitments and their life and how it all fits together. So it's another one of those, it depends answers. It isn't common, but it does happen. Hopefully it answers the question.
What is the purpose of the Netball Northern Preparation Series trials on Friday? So the trials are to select a group of up to 30 athletes. Sorry, I should have explained that better. So we select up to 30 athletes after our trial on Friday. And the purpose of it is to train and prepare for NNL and NNL trials. There's a game in January next year that group will play against the Victoria Institute of Sport. But the purpose is off-season training and skill development for athletes who are focused on netball. Hopefully that answers that. John, do all 10 players in the performance squad get into an NNL team? Go on, Tia.
I just wanted to thanks for asking that question, John. That's such an awesome question to understand about potential and development. The short answer is no, they don't necessarily, because we select those players over anywhere between 1 to 5 years away from ANZ. And we look at all the factors that sit around them, and that's why some of them can be secondary school athletes and some can be out of school. Lots of the people in the performance squad end up in an NNL team, but certainly not all of them. And we've got a number of examples who have been in the performance squad over the past few years who actually skipped NNL and went straight to a ANZ contracted team. either in our own zone or elsewhere. So sometimes when they join, particularly if they're, let's say in year 13, we've had 1 or 2 in year 12 in the past, and they've trained potentially for 3 or 4 years before they've actually got into an NNL team. And sometimes it means that their training age has been accelerated and they can actually perform with an ANZ squad, either in a apprentice role, training partner role, or a fully contracted role. So all those examples exist.
Sweet. That actually does remind me for most of you might not know this, apprentice training partners and training partners, although aligned to their ANZ team, can go, if contracted to a different team at any stage. There's a couple of rules around it, but generally, if you're a training partner or apprentice training partner, you are available for selection in any ANZ Premiership team if there's a need by that team. Is there anything we would like secondary school coaches to ensure their players get put in a good position to progress into the pathway? Maybe Rob, this might be one for you.
Probably a couple of things. Great question. So we certainly know that players need to train. So and I think off the top of my head, I think Lee and her group did something around, I think it was the school age players, that I think their recommendation is around, and it's a conservative recommendation, but at least it's a good one, that it's 2 to 1 in terms of training versus playing. So we want to encourage to get better. You need to train. Like, playing's good, and everyone loves to play, so I get that. But we want to certainly encourage that they probably train more than they play in the ideal world, or at least as much as they play. And that we're really big, we're hot on making sure that we're really skill focused. There's certainly a tactical focus as well, but the game's based off catch, throw, and land. So we want to be able to make sure we can do all those things really well. So those fundamental skills, if we can keep nailing them, they hold you well. So that would be my couple of things that I would suggest.
The other little thing I'd add about training isn't just netball practice. It's also off-court conditioning and off-court strength work. And if you're wondering where you can find information out about that, the Netball Smart website is absolutely the place to start. There's some excellent resources on there for conditioning and bodyweight strengthening. Certainly for still growing and developing athletes, that's a great place to start. Well, thank you all for coming. I appreciate you giving up your Tuesday evening to come and listen to us. Hopefully we've answered a few questions, and if you still have questions, as Rob said before, I'm really happy to answer them after the meeting. And I think Tanya is going to close us again, eh?
Me kere ki tātou. Onuhia ki te uru tapanui, kia wātia, kia mama, tinako, ti tinana, ti wairoa, I te ara tangata. Koia rā e rongo whakaerea ake ki runga. Kia tina, huie, tāiki e.
Cool. Thank you everyone for coming. Appreciate it. We'll see you later.